Okay, hi there to anyone who's watching the recording. We are going to be continuing our reading from the teachings of Zen Master Empty Cloud. We're going to be looking at the teachings from Laymen Pang. It's going to be a lot of wonderful information today, and hopefully you'll be able to join and get some benefit from it. As usual, if you'd like to participate, you can move ahead to the 10-minute mark in the video if you're watching the recording, and that is when we will officially begin. I will give the headphones to him. Is he ready to listen to Dhamma talk? You can. Thank you. Okay, you can ask him, is he ready? Are you ready? Are you ready to begin? Okay. Okay, is he good? Can you check? Make sure his... No? Yeah. Down. Up. All right. Hello, Nico, Aridia, Cagnal. Hi there, Karuna. Yes, can see you. Robert. Okay, so we'll start in a few minutes, about 7 minutes. Give people time to settle in and to join in, and then we will begin. Hi there, Arushi, Susan, and Suraj on YouTube. And I see Jake. Welcome, Jake. And Cliff. Aridia, you want to say something?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Bhante, you talked about a precept yesterday, which was not to indulge in sexual misconduct. Would you please explain what is a misconduct, as in what will be a misconduct?
Okay, I will answer you one moment.
He said that it's the same from yesterday.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
That's the caveat.
Okay.
But could be that some introduction is the same, right?
Yeah, but anyway, he'll listen to a different one. So,
That's what I did ask.
okay.
More layman.
Okay. Hi there, Pen. So, Aridia, you asking about sexual misconduct, right? So the precept is pretty simple, and all of the precepts are pretty simple. Um, Doing something in a way that brings you stress, brings you weakness, causes suffering to yourself or to someone else. That's it. And it's going to be unskillful according to your own wisdom, according to your own knowledge. And as you grow to have a deeper mind, a more open heart, a more clear seeing in your practice, you're going to reframe what does it mean to follow that precept, because it gets more and more refined. You get more and more careful. But as it is now, with your mind as it is now, you just to avoid and reduce unnecessary sexual activity, and particularly to avoid any kind of sexual conduct that puts yourself at risk or puts someone else at risk. Okay? And for some of us, that can also be just changing our relationship to sexuality so that we're not practicing it all the time. So we take a few breaks in our lives from sexuality. But the most important for that precept is to avoid misconduct, to avoid unskillful practices of sexual activity. So be careful. All right. So let me just make an announcement that we are about to get started. Hi, David. Okay. So just 2 more minutes and then we will begin. Today we'll start with just a short bit of meditation, just to get still, to get settled, and then we will dive into our readings, um, continued reading of the teachings from Zen Master Empty Cloud. And today's reading will focus on Layman Pang, who was a layperson, not a monk, who experienced, who had a great degree of enlightenment. And so we'll be reading some of the stories of that layman Pang, that enlightened, normal person. Okay, so as we invite the bell, as we ring the bell, we are listening to the pure sound of awareness, the Buddha's voice. So we listen to the bell and it brings us to the present, brings us to our body, brings us to gather and collect, to come here, to be here right now, and to settle. Thich Nhat Hanh, I was just watching a teaching from Thich Nhat Hanh recently, and they have a practice in his community to invite the bell. So first there's an invitation to the bell, kind of short ring, and then 3 full rings. So as we invite the bell, kind of a half ring, we know that the bell is about to sound. We know that the Buddha's voice is about to be shared openly. And so upon hearing that invitation, we can begin to listen deeply, listen fully, and then as the full bell is rung, uh, we begin our practice, begin to go inside. All right? So let's invite the bell together. Breathing in deeply, finding the body, experiencing the body sitting here, breathing and being with this stillness, this awareness. When we get distracted or have difficulty, just restart, refresh, returning to the breath, returning to being aware of the body. Any thoughts, any distractions, just like clouds floating in the sky. Some may be more interesting than others, but they're just clouds floating by. No need to get too involved. No need to worry too much. Just breathing and being aware. No reactivity, no goal, no particular direction that we are moving in. But just at this moment, to let the body be still, to let the breath happen naturally, to breathe and be aware, to be still. Stillness in motion. Just to sit and be aware of whatever is happening. Every distraction, everything that you notice. The sound of stillness. Reminder to be with the body and relax. Okay, so make sure you're comfortable And you're invited to continue that kind of meditation practice. Um, and we will continue in our readings of the teachings from Zen Master Empty Cloud. But we'll start today with a verse from the original Buddhist teachings, the Pali Canon. And then we'll get into our, I believe, maybe chapter 9 or chapter 10. Drowsiness and lethargy. Lethargy, lack of energy, lack of enthusiasm. It's important on the spiritual path that we do bring this enthusiasm. Drowsiness, lethargy, lazy stretching. Discontent, tired after meals. Because of this, here among beings, the noble path does not appear. Drowsiness, lethargy, lazy stretching. Discontent, tired after meals. When one dispels, gets rid of this with energy, the noble path is cleared. So let's dispel our laziness, our tired stretching, our sleepiness after meals, and the noble path will appear clearly before us. So chapter 10, Laymen Pang. Sometimes ordinary folks get the idea that the meaning of Zen is so profound that only people who've been ordained in the Dharma can possibly fathom it, so monks and nuns. But that is just not so. Actually, we monks often feel that we are in way over our heads. And every now and then, while we splash about, trying to look good treading water in our nice uniforms, along comes a civilian who zips by us, swimming like an Olympic champion. Such a civilian was Layman Pang. And layman here means not a monk. If you're a lay person, that means you're not a priest, you're not a monk, just a normal person, a normal Buddhist person. So such a civilian was Layman Pang. He would have won Zen's gold medal. He has been a hero not only to centuries worth of other lay people, but also, I confess, to every monk who's ever studied his winning style. Layman Pang lived during the latter half of the 8th century, a golden age for Zen. He was an educated family man. He had a wife and a son and daughter, and was well enough off financially to be able to devote his time to Buddhist studies. He got the idea that a person needed solitude in order to meditate and ponder the Dharma. So he built himself a little one-room monastery near his family home. Every day he went there to study and practice. His wife, son, and daughter studied the Dharma too, but they stayed in the family house, conducting their business and doing their chores, incorporating Buddhism into their daily lives. Layman Pang had submerged himself in the sutras, and one day he found that he too was in over his head. He hadn't learned to swim yet. On that day, he stormed out of his monastery hut and, in absolute frustration, complained to his wife. Difficult, difficult, difficult. Trying to grasp so many facts is like trying to store sesame seeds in the leaves of a treetop. So oftentimes people can approach the spiritual path this way, trying to grab and get a hold of all of these ideas and teachings and facts of the path, of what Buddhism is, of what enlightenment is. So trying to grasp so many facts is like trying to store sesame seeds in the leaves of a treetop. His wife retorted, "Easy, easy, easy. You've been studying words, but I study the grass and find the Buddha self reflected in every drop of dew." Now, Layman Pang's daughter, Ling Zhao, was listening to this verbal splashing, so she went swimming by. "Two old people foolishly chattering," she called. "Just a minute," shouted Layman Pang. "If you're so smart, tell us your method." Ling Zhao returned to her parents and said gently, "It's not difficult and it's not easy. When I'm hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep." Ling Zhao had mastered natural Zen, natural enlightenment. Layman Pang learned a lot that day. He understood so much that he put away his books, locked his little monastery hut, and decided to visit different Chan masters, different Zen masters, to test his understanding. He still couldn't compete against his own daughter, but he was getting pretty good. Eventually, he wound up at Nan Yu Mountain, where Master Shi Tu had a monastic retreat. Layman Pang went directly to the master and asked, "Where can I find a person who is unattached to material things?" Master Shi Tu slowly raised his hand and closed Pang's mouth. In that one gesture, Layman Pang's Zen really deepened. He stayed at Nan Yu for many months. So we spoke a little bit about this earlier of mind to mind, center to center, heart to heart. So when Layman Pang here, he has some degree of understanding, some degree of wisdom, but he wants to test it. He wants to see, how deep is his understanding actually. So he goes to visit these different Zen masters, these, powerful monks. And he went directly to the master of this monastery and said, "Where can I find a person who is unattached to material things?" So where can I find a person who has had a degree of success in detaching from material things, the body, physical pleasures, some degree of enlightenment, basically? Where can I find someone with some degree of enlightenment? And Master Shi Tu slowly raised his hand and closed Pang's mouth. So center to center, heart to heart. In that one gesture, Pang's Zen really deepened. He stayed at Nan Yu for many months. So what did the putting the hand over the mouth mean? Well, spontaneous, sincerity. And you can probably understand it in a few different ways, but it's that sincere, spontaneous, not relying on intellectual thought as a response. And so he stayed at that monastery for many months. All the monks there watched him and became quite curious about his natural Zen, his perfect equanimity, perfect balance. Even Master Shi Tu was moved to ask him what his secret was. "Everyone marvels at your methods," said Shi Tu. "Tell me, do you have any special powers?" Layman Pang just smiled and said, "No, no special powers. My day is filled with humble activities, and I just keep my mind in harmony with my tasks. I accept what comes without desire or aversion. When encountering other people, I maintain an uncritical attitude, never admiring, never condemning. To me, red is red, and not crimson or scarlet. So what marvelous method do I use? Well, when I chop wood, I chop wood, and when I carry water, I carry water." Master Shi Tu was understandably impressed by this response. He wanted Pang to join his Sangha. "A fellow like you shouldn't remain a layman," said Shi Tu. "Why don't you shave your head and become a monk?" The proposition signaled the end of Pang's sojourn with Shi Tu. Clearly, he could learn no more from this master. Pang responded with a simple remark: "I will do what I will do," and what he did was leave. So this, master or this head monk of the monastery is now, asking Pang to um, bite on the material world. Change yourself for this reason. You should become a monk. You shouldn't be the way that you are. You shouldn't just do what you do. You should do what I want you to do. And in this way of the master's request, Pang realized, oh, I don't have anything more to learn from this person. They're putting me in um, a contrived situation, and I'm not here for contrivance. I'm here for liberation. So Pang left, said, "I'll do what I'll do," and what he did was leave. He next showed up at the doorstep of the formidable Master Mazu. Again he asked the master, "Where can I find a person who is unattached to material things?" Matsu frowned and replied, "I'll tell you after you've swallowed West River in one gulp." In grasping that one remark, Pang was able to complete his enlightenment. He saw that uncritical mind was not enough. His mind had to become as immense as Buddha mind. It had to encompass all of samsara and nirvana, all suffering and all peace, all wellness, to expand into infinity's void. Such a mind could easily swallow the Pacific. Layman Pang stayed with Master Mazu until he discovered one day that he had no more to learn from him either. On that particular occasion, Pang approached Mazu and standing over him said, "An enlightened fellow asks you to look up." Mazu deliberately looked straight down. Layman Pang sighed. "How beautifully you play the stringless lute." So who here is enlightened? At this point, Mazu had confirmed that there was no difference between human beings, that they were truly one and the same individual. As Pang had looked down, Mazu would look down. There was no one else to look up. But then, unaccountably, Mazu looked straight up and broke the spell, so to speak. So Layman Pang bowed low and remained in that obeisance of finality as Mazu rose and began to walk away. Obeisance is a certain kind of respect, a deferential, deep respect. So to bow or to prostrate oneself out of respect. as Mazu rose and began to walk away. As the master brushed past him, the layman whispered, "Bungled it, didn't you? Trying to be clever." So, how can we respond to any given situation in a spontaneous, sincere way that transcends, cuts through any kind of conceptual thought? How can we respond to life as it is rather than how it appears to be? And that's what these interactions are about, but in the most kind of uh, intense and intimate and subtle, refined kind of way. Um, but we can bring that into our own lives of responding spontaneously to a multifaceted situation, not getting stuck, even though there's a lot to get stuck on. Walking through thorns and not having any wounds or cuts that come about because we don't get caught by our thoughts, by our beliefs, by our stories, because that's not reality. It's just like we all have an individual story, individual perceptions that we can apply to myself, my life, and they can be very, very believable. And it's easy to believe in them and to convince other people to believe in them. I'm a Buddhist monk. Look, I'm wearing robes, my head is shaved, I don't have eyebrows. I better be a monk. I better be something. But in reality, um, what is happening right now has nothing to do with that. It's not even to be human. It's a direct lived experience of reality as it is at this moment. That's what we experience in meditation. And we integrate that into our lives. And for someone who's deep involved in these stages of enlightenment, their ways of interacting can be so subtle, so refined, so spontaneous, especially when it's two enlightened people working together, communicating together. Just in the same way that two craftsmen, two sculptors, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, I don't know if they're both sculptors, but two sculptors working together, they can make a very refined statue, sculpture. But if you just have one sculptor working together with an assistant, there's a different kind of relationship there. So this is talking about that relationship between two basically enlightened or very close to enlightened people. So Layman Pang had attained mastery, and every master he encountered acknowledged this. But what is evident to a master is not always evident to an ordinary monk. One winter day, while Pang was leaving the monastery of Master Yao Shan, some young monks who were disdainful of his status as a mere layman accompanied him to the front door. So Layman Pang here has traveled the world, traveled China, and been kind of verified by many masters, many teachers, great masters and monks and teachers who have said, look, this is great. This looks wonderful. You've really had amazing success. But he's not a monk. And so, as he's visiting one monastery, one temple, this group of monks, just regular old monks, accompany him to the front door. He's on his way out. And these monks are kind of looking down on this man, this basically enlightened man, person, because he's not a monk. So they're a higher level than he is in social hierarchy, certainly at a monastery. And they shouldn't act that way, but they were disdainful. They had this sense of disdain or unpleasant feeling towards Layman Pang. So they accompanied him to the front door. When Pang looked outside, he saw that it was snowing. Good snow, he said. The flakes do not fall elsewhere. Good snow. The flakes do not fall elsewhere. They fall exactly where they fall. It's amazing. A monk named Quan, who was impudent as he was stupid, and impudent, what is impudent? Impudent, not showing respect, intentionally unrespectful, to not show respect. A monk named Quan, who was impudent as he was stupid, completely missed the wit, the wisdom in Pang's remark. He mocked the layman, asking sarcastically, "Where did you expect the flakes to fall?" Now, Pang was good naturedly complimenting the snow for not falling in the kitchen or the meditation hall. That is to say, for falling where snow was supposed to fall, in the courtyard and fields, on the trees and roads. Pang knew that he would have to walk a long distance in that bitterly cold snow, and he had accepted that fact without distress. But Pang not only had the wisdom of a master, he had the temper too. When he saw the sneer on the young monk's face, he struck him. He gave him a slap. And if you're enlightened, you can do this kind of stuff. Depends on where you are, depends on the relationships that you have. A lot of, there's where did I just hear about this? I heard it from a good source. Yeah, I heard it from Ajahn Brahm. So in China, in more modern day China, there was a story of a monk, kind of a strict monk who was hosting a meditation retreat. And in this kind of style of striking, or like, wake up, how dare you to wake up, kind of strikes, he struck this woman to wake her up because she was sleeping during meditation. So he maybe give her a strike on the shoulder or something like that with a stick. It's one of the forms, one of the traditions that they do in certain traditions of Zen. So this teacher did that, the head of the monastery did that, and she picked up her phone, called the police. They came and arrested the monk. Retreat's over. This monk went to jail. So it's context is very important here. So you're dealing with ancient China, and this, at least in the context of this story, this basically enlightened man and these very disrespectful monks at the monastery, and so he gave him a strike. He gave him a wake up. And "How dare you?" said the monk. "And you're an ordained monk?" asked Pang incredulously. "Why, you'd be rejected at hell's gates, so you couldn't even get into hell. You're such a mess. Hell wouldn't even accept you." "Just what do you mean by that?" demanded the monk. Pang struck him again. "I mean that though you have eyes, ears, and tongue, you are absolutely blind, deaf, and dumb." Then he calmly went out into the snow as if it were just so much sunshine. He had given the monk quite a lesson. But usually he was extremely kind and patient with those he instructed. There's also a story that I told recently about there was this monk this great master, who would answer any question by holding up one finger. And so then this another monk, or a young monk, or like a temple boy, kind of saw this and heard about this, and then he started holding up his finger as an answer to questions, kind of stealing this enlightened way of answering. And you can't really do that, because it's the spontaneity, it's the sincerity, it's the wisdom that you have inside that you express when you do one particular thing. So anyway, eventually this enlightened monk, this great teacher, asked a question to this young person, this young boy, or this young monk. And the young monk responded to him and held up one finger as a kind of, well, look, I'm enlightened too. And so that monk chopped off his finger in an instant. Well, guess what happened? That young monk became enlightened. So it's a fair trade. If you can become enlightened by that action, then sure, you'll be quite happy to lose a finger. Take the hand, um, because enlightenment is total freedom, and a finger is just bones and flesh and nothing. So, in that case, the ends justify the means. And these enlightened teachers do these actions with great compassion. Um, that's the idea, anyway, act of great compassion. So if I start, well, I can't hit anyone here, but if I try to hit anyone, you can call the police on me. I'm not going to be integrating that into my style of teaching. And in general, you don't need to have so much roughness in learning to meditate or to become enlightened. So strike with gentleness. Continuing with the teachings of the Layman Pang. So one day, as he listened to a man who was trying to explain the Diamond Sutra, he noticed that the fellow was struggling with the meaning of a line that dealt with the non-existence of the ego personality. Perhaps I can help you, Pang said. Do you understand that that which is conditional and changing is not real, and that which is unconditional and immutable is real? So this is a big idea. Do you understand that that which is conditional and changing is not real? It's real if you close in the box. It's real if you put on blinders, then it's real. But if you take off those blinders and you look from a wider, more contemplative perspective about what is life, what is reality, what's real, you will find that this body is not real. It's not a body. It's just a coming together of causes and conditions at this moment. It seems like a body. It feels like a body. We can put all kinds of stories together about it being a body, but it's actually not a body. We just call it that. It's not separate from the dissolution of the body. The coming together of the body being here in the way that it is right now, is not separate from, is not different from the body entirely dissolving and falling apart. So in that sense, the body is not real. And certainly our small-minded sense of a self or an ego personality is not real. It's just something that appears, but its appearance is only a function of its impermanence. It appears from nowhere and it returns to nowhere. So, do you understand that that which is conditional and changing is not real, and that which is unconditional and immutable, cannot be changed, is real? Yes, replied the commentator. And another way I just thought to look at it is kind of like scientifically. So if you are conducting an experiment and you can't set, you can't maintain, you can't test it in a way where it's fixed and it's reliable. This body is not reliable. This self-personality is not reliable. And if you look at it in a scientific way, if you look at it closely, you will see that this self, this version of myself that I imagine I am, is not reliable. It's not fixed. It's not continuous. It's variable. It's always changing. So we don't rely on that sense of self. And we don't rely on the body being real. Because it's only real because of very specific conditions that we find ourselves in right now. And that goes into why we talk about the preciousness and the rarity of having a human body, let alone a healthy body and mind. It's uncomprehendibly rare and precious. and it can change at any moment. Any moment. That's real. That's why we say these marks of reality are impermanence and no self and dissatisfaction, the dissatisfactory nature of sensations, impermanent phenomena. So, do you understand that that which is conditional and changing is not real, and that which is unconditional and immutable, unchangeable, is real? Yes, replied the commentator. Then is it not true that egos are conditional and changing, that no ego is the same from one minute to the next? Is it not true that with each passing minute, depending on circumstances and conditions, we acquire new information and new experiences, just as we forget old information and experiences? Yes, agreed the commentator. But what is there about us that is unconditional and unchanging? Asked Pang. Our common Buddha nature, replied the commentator. Suddenly smiling, suddenly understanding, that alone is real. The rest is mere illusion. He was so happy that he inspired Pang to write him a poem. Since there is neither ego nor personality, who is distant and who is close? Take my advice and quit talking about reality. Experience it directly for yourself. The nature of the diamond wisdom is truth in all its singular purity. Fictitious egos can't divide or soil it. The expressions I hear, I believe, I understand are simply expedient expressions, tools in the diamond cutter's hands. When the work's done, we put them down. So we will put Layman Pang down for today, and we will continue with some of Layman Pang's stories tomorrow for our morning, early afternoon session. So let's take a few moments to get comfortable and practice meditation together to see our innate, original Buddha mind together, normal, ordinary mind. And then we will, if you like, take the 4 precepts, the 5 precepts. We'll take one of those. You can take 4 or 5, it's up to you. Buy 4, get 1 free. Yeah, 5. So let's take a few moments to sit and meditate, and then we'll take the precepts and we'll finish up that way. Inviting the bell to be mindful, to breathe deeply, be aware of the body and mind. fully allowing the body and mind to settle, to be still at this moment. Stillness and motion, noticing, experiencing, being aware and uninvolved, unconvinced, just breathing and being aware. So we can all bring our hands together and we will take the 5 precepts. Repeating after me. I observe the precept to refrain from killing any living beings. I observe the precept to refrain from taking anything that is not given. I observe the precept to refrain from not committing any sexual misconduct. I observe the precept to refrain from telling lies or speaking harshly. I observe the precept to refrain from taking any intoxicants or drugs. Observing these 5 precepts, may I practice with great sincerity. By practicing these 5 precepts, may my mind be protected. By practicing these 5 precepts, may I be free from suffering. May it be so. May it be so. May it really be so. So we can now do 3 sadhus together and then bow. All right? Sadhu. 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 Okay, thank you for joining, everyone. Take care of your body and mind. You can remember the 5 precepts, so it helps you to be mindful in your daily life, helps you to have a structure for living skillfully, and you can incorporate it into how you interact with others, how you live your life, so that you remember this feeling of goodness, of taking care of your body and mind, even outside of meditation. Okay? Thank you, everyone. See you soon. All right, so we can have our meeting now for afternoon, Tuesday,